gentlemen, welcome to another one. This is, well, who knows what it is. I got it wrong last time what number it is. You can read it in the title if you're really curious. So you probably know better than I do which mock draft this is. But we're back for another mock draft. This was a community mock draft. These are all done in the Facebook group, so if you want to get involved, that's where you can do it. The link for that, as well as everything else you'll ever need, is in the description. Quickly, I'll go over that. In the description, you will find the Facebook group, my Twitter, which I would appreciate you follow me, my email if there is some long thing you want to send me, and also ways to support the channel. There's, I don't know, whatever. Affiliate links and a PayPal donation thing if you appreciate the work. I would appreciate that. It's going to go toward upgrading the quality of this, as well as helping with the Facebook group and the new website and everything else that we got going on. So anyways, we'll jump right into it. With the first pick in the 2018 NFL Draft, the Cleveland Browns select Josh Rosen, quarterback out of UCLA. So it's getting to be kind of a regular recurring thing. I think we have somebody new in the next. I'm doing a poll mock draft, so actually if you want to get involved, that might just be an ongoing thing. Just keep going through the rounds. I know the who's drafting when is going to change, but it's kind of fun and it's kind of nice to do it that way. But there is a different pick, finally. But this has become a regular recurring thing. Josh Rosen is widely seen as, I don't know if he's the best or if he's just the safest or what it is. I think there's just a lot of questions, but a lot of concerns have come up. For example, he's had 2 concussions. Some people are saying he says he doesn't want to go to the Browns. I haven't been able to find that. It's probably right in front of my face. I know Darnold said it a long time ago, but now all of a sudden so he must have just recently said, I don't want to play for the Browns, which would now be 2 quarterbacks that have said that. We'll see. Personally, I don't think it'll be a problem. I know the Browns have a bad reputation, but they have a new GM, one who is widely respected. And there's also the issue of how much money you will make being the first overall pick. So, I mean, if I'm looking at it, if I know anything about the NFL, I'm not worried about going to the Browns. I think their trajectory is pointing upward, and I can be the quarterback that helped leads it in that direction with John Dorsey. I'm okay with that. Next up, with the second overall pick in the 2018 NFL Draft, the New York Giants select Saquon Barkley, running back, Penn State. I don't think that was anybody's favorite pick, but as I've said before, Saquon Barkley is a difference maker. There's been kind of a big argument in the last mock draft about how early running backs go, and I tend to be in the line of people that say, I understand the conventional wisdom is you don't draft them this early, but again, and I've said this in about every video, it used to be you don't draft in the first round, then we finally had someone in the first, then it was mid-first, then it was early first, and the trajectory just keeps going up, and Saquon's supposed to be better than all of them, so I don't think it's all that unreasonable. But let me get to the GM's notes, and this was GM AJ. It says, I know everyone thinks we need a quarterback, but I think between Eli and Davis Webb, we have the capable starting quarterback we need. I think our team is still in a situation to compete next year. If we take a quarterback, that jeopardizes our chances next year, which is true because they're going to be playing Eli anyway, so it's essentially a waste. Not a waste, but I don't know. It just depends, like he says, if you think you have a chance next year or if you're drafting for the future. Also, players on the Giants have been very vocal in support of both Webb and Eli. I think Barkley truly is a once-in-a-lifetime talent and my favorite quarterback. Josh Rosen was already taken if I wanted to draft a quarterback. I think this pick, along with the acquisition of some offensive linemen and the rest of the draft and free agency, leaves the Giants in a great situation going into 2018 and the 2019 season. So I think that's good enough, and I don't think I can add to that. Next up, with the third overall pick in the 2018 NFL Draft, the Indianapolis Colts select Mike McGlinchey, tackle, Notre Dame. So I'm going to jump right into the notes, and that is from GM Sam. He says, Colts need to upgrade the offensive line. They've had a bottom 5 offensive line unit the last few years. It's time to give Luck some time in the pocket. Mike McGlinchey is a fantastic offensive tackle prospect and will bring talent to the right tackle position day one. Colts will now have 3 first-round draft picks at the offensive line and could grow into one of the best units in the league once they mature and get better coaching schemes. I did not know that last bit. I guess I won't elaborate on that because I don't really know, but that kind of would worry me if I have previously drafted 2 in the first round and I still have a terrible offensive line. But anyways, I think it makes sense. The only question is that a little bit early? I did allow trades in this draft, so I'm wondering at this point, do you trade back? Especially with some pretty serious offensive line. Even if you drop back to 10 and Mike McGlinchey does go, unless you just don't really care for or you think McGlinchey is some rare talent, I'd probably trade back or try to trade back. Not that he didn't try, and see if I can get one of these guys. If he falls, maybe get Connor Williams or something. But I don't know. That's just a thought. Otherwise, I don't think there's too much you could argue by way of the Colts needing offensive line help. Next up, with the 4th overall pick in the 2018 NFL Draft, the Cleveland Browns select Minkah Fitzpatrick, safety, Alabama. So this was GM Lucas, and allow me to get to these notes here. He's an athletic freak, and the Browns desperately need a safety and a cornerback since Minkah can do both. He can push the Browns to a positive record. I don't know. It was kind of fuddled there in the middle. But he also wanted me to give him a shout out. Luke underscore, it says Wilmot. I don't know, or excuse me, Lucar Wilmot. I think his name is Lucas. So it's either Lucas underscore Wilmot or Lucar, Lukar, which is what he typed. One of the two, but that's the shout out for him. I don't know. I guess I'm still torn on it. I think everybody seems to like these picks, going Josh Rosen and then Minkah Fitzpatrick. I've already stated my confusion, and that is Pro Football Focus has their corners and safeties being somewhere between average and good, but yet they're the worst pass defense consistently in the NFL. I mean, the only reason the Packers aren't just the bottom of the barrel every year is because the Browns have been the bottom of the barrel pass defense for the last couple of years. So, yeah, you can't hate it, considering the talent and having a true sideline-to-sideline free safety, if that indeed is what he is incredibly valuable and maybe undervalued piece for any team, because it's such a rare thing. Very few teams have that. The Seahawks have that. I don't know. There's a few teams that have it, but it's very rare and extremely valuable if you can have one that can cover the backside of the field. Next up, with the 5th pick in the 2018 NFL Draft, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers select Bradley Chubb, edge rusher out of NC State. We'll get to the GM notes here. It's Ethan, who has that one social media thing, Bucks Station, I think. I don't even know. Check out a different video. It's in there somewhere. He says, I was hoping either Minkah or Barkley would have fallen to me so I didn't have to be boring and pick Chubb for the 10,000th time, and that's exactly what I was going to say, because it's becoming such. I actually really like Derwin as another option, but that was my thing. I kept picking Derwin because it made sense. Now Bradley Chubb keeps getting picked. I mean, it just seems to make the most sense in terms of value and need and whatnot. But anyways, Chubb is the best pass rusher in the draft. Has the straight-up nastiness and it factor the Bucs need on this defense. We're last in the league in sacks and total pass rush, and our only decent guy, Robert Ayers, isn't getting any younger. Chubb is perfect for us and will hopefully resemble the success we had when we had Warren Sapp and the Bucs had a defense with an actual identity. This is definitely a step in the right direction. I would say it's a step. The Bucs with Warren Sapp, I don't know if we'll ever see the Bucs like that again. But yeah, if that's your goal, Bradley Chubb makes a lot of sense. I think he covered all the bases. I don't think there's much else I can contribute to that. So we'll just move on. With the 6th pick in the 2018 NFL Draft, the Denver Broncos select Connor Williams, tackle, Texas. So the GM was John, and his notes are thusly: Connor Williams, because there's a good chance that the Broncos pick up Kirk Cousins in free agency. Interesting. And they draft a quarterback in the 2nd or 3rd round. We need a solid left tackle. We can move Bowles to right tackle. So some strategery there. I don't know if I would say it's a good chance, but definitely something that you can hope for and say that there's a good chance that they're trying to get Kirk Cousins. Whether or not there's a good chance he'll end up with the Broncos, I would say that's a stretch. But yeah, and that's true with a lot of teams in terms of we have to consider what happens if you can go out and get somebody in free agency, right? Think about the Browns. If the Browns had a shot at Kirk Cousins, holy cow, imagine having the 1st and 4th overall picks in the draft and you don't need a quarterback. How much damage you could do in this draft. Oh my goodness. Anyways, that's just me thinking out loud. With the 7th pick In the 2018 NFL Draft, the New York Jets select Josh Allen, quarterback out of Wyoming. So the what is PP? Oh, never mind. I don't know. Joey is the GM for that team, and he said this. If I can get it here. The Jets have their pick of 3 quarterbacks here. The last real game tape teams will see of Allen is from his bowl game. Teams will see how good of an arm he possesses and how, I can't swear on here, bad of a cast he has around him. The Jets aren't ready to compete regardless of who they pick. They can sit Allen until he's ready or start him. So, and there's something to be said about that too, with the whole bowl game and being a champion thing. And that was sort of my thought with Deshaun Watson. You know, I kind of liked him as much as I didn't really look into quarterbacks because I'm a Packers fan and I'm looking at linebackers and all kinds of boring stuff, cornerbacks. But the thing I really liked about him is this is a guy who can win in big games. He goes into a bowl game against Alabama and beats Alabama. Nobody beats Alabama. He went in and beat them, right? I mean, this is a guy who can take your team, who maybe isn't even as good as the people across from you, in big games when it counts, right? We're talking about, you know, can we get into the playoffs? Can we win in the playoffs? Can we win in the Super Bowl? Some players, some quarterbacks don't have that. You need to maybe take that into consideration. What happens in big games? Because all this other stuff doesn't matter if you can develop a guy and you turn him into this great quarterback and he falls apart in the playoffs. A guy that can win in big games and big situations is something that absolutely needs to be taken into account. So looking at Josh Allen and saying he had a good performance in a bowl game, I don't think that's insignificant. And it also is something that could rise you up the boards for those of you looking at this saying Josh Allen is going too early. That's exactly the kind of thing that has you screaming up the draft boards really quickly. Next up, with the 8th pick in the 2018 NFL Draft, the San Francisco 49ers select Derwin James, safety, Florida State. This was a group pick. You know, it happens. This was actually a really good draft in terms of GMs showing up. The last one we did, it was I don't think it was 50%, but there were a few group picks, some people that didn't show up. I don't know what happens, but anyways, my personal thought here is that this is a value pick more than a need pick. Based on the statistics that I'm looking at, the 49ers aren't the worst, but they're definitely not the best. They're you know, in the bottom half in pass defense in terms of yards and net yards per attempt and all that kind of stuff. So they're not very good in pass defense. But looking at Pro Football Focus, they seem to have 3 safeties that aren't horrible. Eric Reed and Adrian Colbert are listed as average with this guy, Jaquiski Tart. I don't even know who that is. Apparently, this is his 3rd year. His first 2 years, this guy was an abomination to football, and all of a sudden this year he's ranked in the top 20 for safeties and has an extremely good grade. My stupid alarm. I set an alarm every hour just because I'm so paranoid that I'm going to oversleep. And then furthermore, as I look at this, I see Eric Reed as the strong safety. I feel like Derwin is probably going to be strong safety. The only caveat to that would be I think free safety is probably a more valuable position. And the way they have this, by the way, is Colbert and Reed as the 2 guys. So the Tart guy that I said is very good. Doesn't seem to be even playing very often. But if Derwin can play free safety, if he has that speed and range and you know is that good at picking off balls, that's the more valuable position. So you default to free safety unless he is just naturally a more strong safety type, and he is just a big bad dude. I love watching him play so much. So either way, he's going to be probably an upgrade, but in terms of need, it's probably not my favorite pick. Next up, with the 9th pick in the 2018 NFL Draft, the Chicago Bears select Quenton Nelson, guard out of Notre Dame. Right off the bat, this was not a very popular pick. The Bears have, if nothing else, they have a reputation for having pretty good guards. Josh Sutton, the old Packer who went over there, he was always a very good guard and is still one of the top guards in the NFL. And then they have they have the 2 highest paid guards in the NFL. They obviously value them, which I think is to the credit of this pick. I don't know if they still have that high of a value, but they seem to see the importance of having some talented guards. Let me just get to his notes here before he says, best player available, so there you go. Honestly, I would consider trading Trubisky and taking Darnold since for some dumb reason he is left, but that's not realistic. So, yeah, I don't know why you would even consider that. But whatever. We'll leave it at it's not realistic. But it's as much as everyone in the group hated it, and as much as I can hear Bears fans seething right now, just keep in mind Josh Sutton is at the end of his rope. I mean, as good as he is, he's just about out the door. And Long has been graded as average for quite a long time. As good as his reputation is, there's no question he's overpaid. He's average, he's decent, I know you like him, but he gets paid way too much money for the performance. There are other needs that are more important needs, but, he will get playing time. He will be a good contributor for this team for a very long time, so you can at least rest in that. Also, I just want to make a quick note. I've had a couple people say, I'm a Bears fan, I can't subscribe to this. I'm a Lions fan, I can't subscribe to this. I haven't had any Vikings fans say that. I don't know if you guys are joking, but you got to lighten up a little bit. I know I have some fun. I know I brag about the Packers even though they're not in the playoffs. I know I rag on people, but if anybody's going to be upset, it's Patriots fans, because I have been very unfair to Patriots fans, and I haven't heard anybody cry about it yet. We're just having fun, man. Get in the comment section like everybody else and call me names. You have a platform to make me feel sad about my life. Go ahead and take advantage of it. But we're just having fun. All right, I'm all for the Bears. This is draft time. This is the NFL football season is over. When I put on the headset, sometimes Pack Daddy comes out and I get a little excited about the Packers and trash the Bears. But listen, I'm all for you. When I do these mock drafts, I'm trying to build the greatest Bears franchise in the history of the world. Same with the Lions, same with the Patriots, same with the Vikings. So if you're actually serious about I can't subscribe to this because you're a Packers fan, come on, man. Come on. Don't be like that. It's all love. Go in the Facebook group and ask anybody in that group if I treat anyone unfairly. Anyways, we're moving on. It blew my mind. I got like 3 people in a row saying, you're a Packers fan, you're unfair to my team, blah, 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 blah. Like, give me a break, man. Lighten up a little bit. Have some fun, will you? Jeez. It goes for all you. Man, the amount of negative comments, good Lord. And some of you are upset about me rambling, which I'm doing right now. I don't care. You don't like it? Go get your own stupid channel. Let's see how many views you get. You think this is easy? You know how many people have mock draft channels that get 50 views? Give me a break. You're a genius, fine. Get in the Facebook group and tell everybody about it. Otherwise, start your own channel, get your own following, and leave me alone. Jealousy, that's what it is. Jealousy. Anyways, moving on. With the next pick, we have the Cincinnati Bengals, but we did have our first trade of the evening. I did have quite a few more rules because the trades in the past have been horrible as well as stressful trying to keep track of all this stuff. I won't get into the rules, but this time the trade is coming from the Arizona Cardinals. The trade details, let's see. I'm just going to read it because this is way too... I need dual screen down here. This is way too hard. So here's what it said. My first... for this year, my second, so this is the Cardinals GM speaking about what he gave up. His first, his second, and his fourth, and then a first and a fourth for next. So that, man, I thought we changed that because that is way too much. I don't like that. Forget that. There was a trade, and that is not what he gave up. I already vetoed that. That's nonsense. He gave up... He may as well moved up from 32 to 4. That's so dumb. It makes me upset. That's not what they traded. Cardinals traded up. They gave up like a 4th round pick. That's official from me. Anyways, so the Cardinals are on the clock, and they select Baker Mayfield, quarterback, out of Oklahoma. Took me a minute. Here's what GM Greg had to say. Even though Mayfield had that one stupid incident, Mayfield is still probably the best quarterback in this year's draft class. I know I traded a king's ransom to only move up 3 spots. No, you didn't. But to get a franchise quarterback like Mayfield, it was totally worth it. No, it wouldn't be. Now, for the actual reason. Mayfield makes great decisions, has a strong arm, is somewhat mobile, just a great quarterback. And for this draft, the number 1 guy on my board. Very surprised he fell this much, so when I had my chance to trade up for him, I did just that. I agree with everything that Greg just said. No way he's worth that many draft picks. I mean, he gave away an additional 1st round pick. I mean, no, I don't even care that it's a quarterback. He moved up 3 spots. It's worth like a 3rd. I think a 3rd round would be a good value. I think I said like a 3rd and a 4th would be a good value. And if you want to get carried away, give him a 2nd. But to give up a 1st, a 2nd, a 4th, and a 1st, come on, Greg. Come on, man. So I know I completely gypped the Bengals guy who thought he made a great trade. but I don't care. I have to care somewhat about the realism of these videos, and that's just insane. But overall, I like it. The Cardinals need a quarterback. I am a huge Baker Mayfield fan. There's always the question of can those abilities transfer into the NFL, but the abilities he has in college, as I've said before, according to the stats done by Pro Football Focus, just about every category he dominates, whether it's under pressure, quarterback rating, deep passes, short passes, intermediate passes. He is just the most dominant, statistically dominant quarterback in college football, and there's no question about it, and he fell to 10. Cardinals gave up a lot, so we'll call it a second round. We'll just say they went nuts and traded up and got him, whatever. I'm fine with it. Next up, with the 11th pick in the 2018 NFL Draft, the Oakland Raiders select Roquan Smith, linebacker out of Georgia. I actually watched Roquan Smith pretty much all night last night. It's kind of hard when you got a family, so I'm watching him as I'm playing Play-Doh with my son and chasing my daughter from putting sharp objects in her mouth and whatnot. But for the most part, I was trying to focus on Roquan Smith, because I'm trying to understand why he's so high up. And I'll get to Clelin was the one that graded him or picked him, and I'll get to his notes in a second. I understand he's extremely fast. He's great in coverage. His play recognition is incredible. The one concern I have is he's kind of small and he's not very strong. I mean, this is a guy who goes up to get quarterbacks, and the quarterbacks knock him backward. I mean, he can't even hit a quarterback and knock him back. So on, third and short for a quarterback sneak, he's got a clean shot on the quarterback, and he can't stop him because he's too small, essentially. And don't even get me started on offensive line. I saw an offensive lineman put one hand on him, who, these guys try to block downfield. They're falling down because they're so unbalanced. This guy puts one hand on Roquan, and Roquan's arms are flailing. He got knocked back 10 yards. I mean, I'm not exaggerating. 10 yards. So I understand he has some extreme talent, but get into the NFL, you got tight ends and offensive linemen. A lot of people are going to get your hand on you, and if you're not strong enough, you got to be able to shed blocks. So he makes some incredible plays, but man, if anybody gets a hand on this guy, he's completely knocked out of the play. And beyond that, he's not stuffing anybody. I mean, he's very fast. You can get him on blitzes and stuff, but even, running backs, quarterbacks, running out of the backfield or knocking him backwards, I don't care for that. Anyways, see, I'm rambling again. I said I wasn't going to do that. Here we go. Here's Keelan's notes. I was originally looking at trading up for Derwin James, but the 49ers took him, so I thought I would go with the safe pick and the best player available in Roquan. So you've got my opinion. It doesn't seem to be the popular opinion with Roquan Smith going in the top 15 consistently now, but that's where it is. So next up, with the 12th pick in the 2018 NFL Draft, the Miami Dolphins select Sam Darnold, quarterback out of USC. That was a group pick. It's a new name, which I appreciate. And one thing that's kind of cool, Sam Darnold he was number one, then he kind of fell off, and everybody said they don't like him. Now I'm seeing Sam kind of rise back up to the top, kind of doing this whole bobbing thing. But anyways, as I mentioned before, the Dolphins need a lot of things. Sam Darnold, as much as I'm not a huge fan, he has some incredible abilities to where, people that know a lot more about scouting than I do, the guys that are on television that do this for a living, that have been watching him his entire career since his first snap, who have watched every single ball he's thrown, these guys look at Sam Darnold, and many of them say he is the best coming into the NFL. Now, whether or not he actually comes out into the draft or not, I don't know. I get that comment a lot too. He's probably not even, I understand that, but until I hear it officially from this person himself, he's going to be in the mock drafts. I can't just drop everybody who there's rumors about. So Sam Darnold to the Dolphins, I think, makes a lot of sense. Some people were really upset, saying that's stupid, they're going to stick with Tannehill. Maybe, but why? What is the ceiling of Tannehill? What is the best you're going to get out of Tannehill? Is he ever going to win you a Super Bowl? Ever? And I say this about a lot of teams with the Jets and whatnot. Are we just talking about improving around what we have and trying to beat 8-8 and maybe sneak into the playoffs, or are we really serious about being perennial Super Bowl contenders? Because if you want to be that, you got to get yourself an Aaron Rodgers, you got to get yourself a Drew Brees or a Tom Brady or even a Ben Roethlisberger or somebody better than a Tannehill. Because a Tannehill's never going to get you there. So if you're good with that, fine. But if you actually want to get better, you can't hate picking Sam Darnold at 12. That's where I'm going to leave it. Next up with the 13th pick, we have the Cincinnati Bengals, who are the ones that traded back for who knows what picks. We'll just make something up in your mind that you think makes sense. The Cincinnati Bengals select Orlando Brown, tackle, Oklahoma. That pick was made by GM Chris, and here are his notes. Bengals still need to replace Andrew Whitworth, and although quarterback is a need, guys like Drew Lock or Luke Falk will be available later in the draft to grow behind Andy Dalton. The return of John Ross will add an aspect to the Bengals offense as well as this pick, providing them with more running lanes for Joe Mixon. The fact that Mike McGlinchey, Quenton Nelson, and Connor Williams have gone off the board means Orlando Brown is the last top-tier O-lineman left on the board, which means this pick is more necessary at this stage of the draft. The extra picks gained from the trade down is beneficial to the future of the team too. So that makes sense. A lot of times you look at biggest needs, so you have to take that in the first round. Not necessarily. You have to figure what's going to be available later. So it makes sense. If you need a guard, you can get him later. If you need a quarterback, maybe a second round they'll be available. Offensive tackle, as he said, there's 3 or 4 that maybe are NFL caliber left tackles, and every single one of them, they're anybody that's seen as somebody that can be a starting left tackle today, they're not getting out of the first round. Same with quarterbacks. Anybody that you believe can start for your team today at quarterback, they're gone at the top half of the draft. So it makes sense from that standpoint. If you want one, if you need one, and there's one available, you take them now, and you take your chances that somebody else is going to fall to you later, especially, like he said, with Andy Dalton, you're probably not going to start this new quarterback right away, so you can get a developmental quarterback in the second round, possibly a little later. So I am good with that pick as well. Next up, at pick 14 in the 2018 NFL Draft, the Washington Redskins select Courtland Sutton, wide receiver, SMU. That was also a group pick. The Redskins are always tough. I wish we can get something a little more definitive about their quarterback situation, because now we've already had one team make a decision based on we're going to get Kirk Cousins. This pick is probably largely dependent on Kirk Cousins being there, although even if he's not, what are you going to do? Maybe you get Lamar Jackson or something. I don't really know. But a lot of the quarterbacks are gone. I think in terms of value, it makes sense. I think in terms of need, it makes sense. They have some kind of average wide receivers, but nobody that I would consider elite or a true, really good number one wide receiver. That's my opinion, as well as the PFF grades, which I'll get to that later. I'll wait till I get to the Cowboys before I get into that. But in general, I think it's a good pick. Courtland Sutton is definitely growing on me. He's somebody that, even as a Packers fan, I'm kind of building my own little board for my team, and I'm probably going to try to get everyone to do that for their own team. But it's kind of a wish list, just to look at, what are the odds that one of these guys is going to be available. And I'm trying to get, if the Packers pick at 15, I'm hoping I can find 15 guys that I just really, really love. I think I'm at 7 right now. But Courtland Sutton, I think, just made that list. I think he's a very talented wide receiver, and he's going to be a good addition to the Washington Redskins. Next up at pick 15 in the 2018 NFL Draft, the Green Bay Packers select Harold Landry, edge rusher, Boston College. For the record, Harold Landry is one of my guys on that top 7 list. I'm trying to decide who is my favorite edge rushers. I really want to like Arden because of his physical abilities and his attributes. I mean, he's so big and he's so powerful, and he's just one of those guys that, for his size, he shouldn't be as athletic as he is, and he's so powerful and all this stuff, but he doesn't seem to put it together on the tape. I'm watching him, and it's like, the guy just doesn't really make plays, and he's bigger and stronger than the guy in front of him. He can't get around him. I don't know, but the exact opposite is true with Harold Landry. He seems very small, but the guy plays with an incredible amount of power, incredible speed. He can get around the edge. He can go through you. Really, really, really starting to like Harold Landry. So at pick 15, very happy with this pick. The pick, if I haven't said, was done by GM Kevin. He didn't give me any notes, but we'll leave it at that. I'm happy with Harold Landry at pick 15 for the Green Bay Packers. At pick 16 in the 2018 NFL Draft, the LA Chargers select Daron Payne, defensive tackle, Alabama. This was another group pick, and I've actually seen the Chargers take defensive tackle quite often. I think it's just a mix of value and need. And when you look at need, there's other things that you think of for Chargers, but they could use some defensive line help, and it just feels like with them being in the middle, there's always going to be Christian Wilkins or Payne or one of these guys is always available. It kind of fits. Every time you look at it, it doesn't seem to be who you'd want to take. I mean, if I could just pick somebody without the draft taking place, who would you want? He would be a little further down the list. But they always seem to be getting defensive tackles in these mock drafts. Even when I do them, it just always seems to make the most sense. So it'll be interesting on draft day to see where we're at with that. Draft boards changing and where exactly the Chargers are going to be selecting. But at this time, I do see that a lot, and as I've said in all these videos, the Chargers with another key piece, especially if this guy can really hit. Christian Wilkins, Payne, these are guys that are extremely talented that seem to fall down the draft, in the mock drafts anyways. If they can get another elite piece along with these great defensive linemen and your edge guys and your corners and your safeties and everything else, I mean, it would just be incredible to add another really good piece and to eliminate one of the weaker links in your chain. Next up, with the 17th pick in the 2018 NFL Draft, the Buffalo Bills select Lamar Jackson, quarterback out of Louisville. So this was GM Mason. Here's what he had to say. With the Bills trying to get rid of Tyrod every chance they've had, the Bills get rid of Tyrod and replace him with one of the most dynamic players in the whole draft. I'm trying to say new things, but man, you do this every week, and it's kind of becoming, it's hard to come up with new material here. But Lamar Jackson is one of the guys I'm most interested in watching. Maybe he'll be a bust, but I guarantee you I will be watching, as will most people be watching, his first game. Hopefully it's not on the same time as a Packer game, because then I just lied and I will not be watching him. But extremely excited to watch him, and it's for that reason. A lot of people say he's not going to be a first-round guy. I just don't buy it. His talent is so incredible, and the potential is so high. I mean, he probably has the highest ceiling of any quarterback, and that's something I've probably never heard, but I think it's self-evident. Because if this guy can pass, there's no weapon more dangerous than this guy, because he's so athletic with his legs. And if you can pair that with a guy who can be a pocket passer, it's incredible. And you put him with LaShawn McCoy and maybe get him some wide receiver help, or if some of the wide receivers they have can kind of take a step. And I don't know. I think it's a phenomenal pick. Lamar Jackson falling to 17. I cannot imagine 32 teams allow him to fall out of the first round. I just can't see that happening. So I've said what I've said 1,000 times about Tyrod Taylor. He's, you could do worse than Tyrod Taylor. I understand he's not the greatest, but for crying out loud, he's probably not even bottom half. There's so many terrible quarterbacks is the problem. But anyways, I'm not going to go down that list because, I'm going to get a ton of hate messages about how terrible, what's his name is. With the 18th pick in the 2018 NFL Draft, the Detroit Lions select Arden Key, edge rusher out of LSU. I see this a lot, and it's kind of problematic because he's definitely more of a 3-4 guy, especially with all the issues that I'm seeing with him not being able to do these things and not being, the less I like him, the more I feel like he needs to be on a 3-4 team. I mean, if he's barely a first-round prospect, and I'm that's kind of unfair to say, but I don't know. I'm trying to find film of him doing awesome stuff, and occasionally you see it, but more often than not, you're looking at a guy who is he's like a gentle giant. He has the power to do whatever he wants, but he just doesn't ever dominate. So the fact of him going to a 4-3 team is not my favorite, but if you think I'm wrong, and I think Walter Football still has Arden Key as like the second or third best player in the entire draft. So if he is that good, clearly at pick 18, regardless if it's 3-4, 4-3, it doesn't really matter. But the notes from GM Noah are this. I was going to go for Geis because Abdullah and Riddick are both one-dimensional, and they need to open up the run game, but I did not expect Arden Key to fall this far. Even if they re-signed Ziggy Ansah, they still need edge rushers, and I think Arden Key is more talented than Geis as a prospect. That's why I picked Key over Geis, and I wouldn't necessarily disagree with that. I am curious to see what happens with some of these running backs. Geis has been kind of hovering in that mid to late first round, and Bryce Love has been shooting up the board. It will be interesting to see if any of these guys kind of crack the top half to the first draft over time. I tend to think one of them is probably going to, but we'll see. You never know. But at this point, Arden Key over Darius Geis kind of makes a lot of sense for me, although the need isn't. I don't know what I would do. Maybe I would go Geis in that situation, although it's hard to pass up Key. Moving on, with the 19th pick in the 2018 NFL Draft, the Dallas Cowboys select Christian Wilkins, defensive tackle out of Clemson. The GM for that team was Quenton. Here are his notes. Not a typical Jerry Jones pick, but really the only missing piece of the up-and-coming Dallas defense is an athletic run-stopping defensive lineman that has the ability to climb and get after the quarterback. Smart pick rather than a flashy pick like Calvin Ridley, who is still available. So I think that makes a lot of sense. I think Christian Wilkins is he's a guy that was, again, he was a top 5 guy. All of a sudden he's bottom half of the first round. I don't know exactly why, but you have to like the value here, and you have to like it going to the Cowboys, who need to keep making smart decisions. It was the decision to load up on offensive linemen that I think helped build them to what they are. And then now, defensive linemen and other non-flashy but fundamental core pieces are what's going to help continue to build this team. Speaking of offensive line, I want to do a little bit of a PFF diatribe here, because I said last video that La'el Collins was garbage, and I got, maybe it was just one person that hit me about 6 different times, but it very easily could have been like 6 different people who were infuriated that I said that. I don't know what you're looking at. Now, I don't watch every game like you presumably do, but let me just tell you what Pro Football Focus has to say about La'el Collins, and I'll get to why that matters in a second, but let me just read it to you. Now, I don't want to give out exact grades because that's not fair to Pro Football Focus, but they have a color-coded grading chart, and the terminology I use, it's not their terminology, but it is elite, very good, good, average, bad, garbage. Sometimes I say trash. It's interchangeable. Garbage and trash. So when I say that, I'm speaking, matter-of-factly, not just flippantly. I'm using it as a reference point to say that he is in that graded area of trash. In 2015, he was in the 50s. And by the way, to get into the bad category, you have to be in the 60s. In 2016, he was in the 30s. It's very rare to see any player in the 30s. That is hot garbage. This year, he's back into the 50s, but not quite as high as he was in 2015. Just pure trash. Particularly, his pass grading it's in the 40s. So just absolutely horrible. He's rated outside of the top 50 for all tackles in the NFL. Now, in terms of Pro Football Focus, because I know some people are going to, you can't trust them, they don't know nothing. And you do? Listen, if you know better than Pro Football Focus, you tell me what objective standard you use to tell me that La'el Collins or any other player is better. Because if you're going to trash Pro Football Focus, you got to tell me why you know better than they do. Because they're watching not just every game, they're watching La'el Collins every single snap, every single play, and it's multiple people who have an objective standard. Even if that objective standard isn't perfect, and it's not, I'll acknowledge that, and I'm sure they do as well. What objective standard do you use that's better? Do you even watch him every snap, and do you then actually grade without being biased as a Dallas Cowboys fan? Do you grade every single one? And what do you grade it based on? Do you have NFL coaches and staff who coach you up on how to properly grade offensive linemen? And then do you take that grades and send it up the chart and have a 3-layer grading process to make sure that it's accurate? I understand you have issues with Pro Football Focus, but there is no better objective grading standard than Pro Football Focus. If you want a snapshot of how a player is doing, nobody outside of the Dallas Cowboys locker room knows any better than Pro Football Focus does. And I'm looking at that grade, and I'm telling you, they know a lot better than you do. And to make the comment that he is not trash, he's actually very good, and then somebody went so far as to say better than any Packers offensive tackle, which is a joke. Brian Bulaga was graded as the highest pass blocking tackle in the NFL last year. David Bakhtiari is perennially a top 5 offensive tackle, including this year. Every single year he is a top 5 tackle. So forgive the diatribe here, but give me a break. I don't know everything about your team, but if I'm looking at this Pro Football Focus grade and it's telling me this guy is trash and you tell me he's elite, I'm sorry, I'm not going to take your word for it. As much as I want to respect your opinion and learn from fans, you're not going to sell me that one. La'el Collins is a joke. Period. End of conversation. If you know better, you can tell me in the comments, you can email me, you tell me what exactly you do and how you know better than Pro Football Focus in this grade and how they're so incredibly wrong. It's not like I'm saying he's bad and they say he's average and that's where we're going to draw the line. If you want to say I think he's more average than bad, fine. I'm talking about this is pure trash. One of the worst tackles in the NFL. Garbage. They don't get much worse. 3 years in a row of being not even NFL qualified. That's La'el Collins. That is your right tackle, and I will continue to mock tackles to this team, although that's not who it was. I'm going to continue to do it because La'el Collins is a joke. So, drawing a little line in the sand there, Dallas Cowboys fans, and you can kick and scream about it all you want. Probably upset a lot of people, but man, did that feel good. Sometimes I just get a little angry and I just got to yell into my microphone. All right, next up with pick 20. The Seattle Seahawks are up, but there is the second trade in this draft. They have a trade with the Minnesota Vikings. The Vikings gave up a third and a fifth. So with the 20th pick in the 2018 NFL Draft, the Minnesota Vikings select Tarvarus McFadden, cornerback, Florida State. There are quite a few notes, and the GM for this is Trevor, so I will get to that immediately. Here's what he had to say. McFadden has a build very similar to another FSU corner that the Vikings are familiar with, Xavier Rhodes. If the Vikings can groom another ball-hawking corner to pair with Rhodes, it'll free up Zimmer to become even more creative with his blitz packages. Terrence Newman is very likely gone after this year and surely gone by the end of next season. This provides the perfect scenario for the Vikings to plug and play McFadden while continuing to utilize Trey Waynes and Mackenzie Alexander in different personnel groupings. As a Vikings fan, it pains me to give up a third and a fifth given how successful Rick Spielman has been at getting mid-round steals, such as Hunter, Diggs, and Elflein. However, the ceiling on McFadden was too much to pass up in this situation, and I'd love to see this come April. I don't know if I could say it much better. The best I can do is say as a Packers fan, I would look at that and go, oh, shoot. It's hard enough to score on you guys, and now you get another corner. That kind of stinks. But anyways, moving on. With the 21st overall pick in the 2018 NFL Draft, the Tennessee Titans select Clelin Ferrell, edge rusher, Clemson. That was a group pick, and the Titans need an edge rusher. They need a 3-4 guy, which I think Clelin is talented enough to do that, although you watch him. He almost looks like a defensive lineman sometimes. You look at his picture, he looks like he has this skinny little face, like he's going to be a tiny guy, and then you watch him on film, he looks like he's a 300-pound lineman. I can't figure it out, but very talented edge rusher. He's another guy I'm trying to wrap my head around. Do I really like him or not? Very powerful type guy. I definitely feel like he's more of a 4-3 guy than a 3-4 guy, but based on the love and respect he gets from people that I respect, I tend to think he could excel in either a 4-3 or a 3-4. I also think he's fallen entirely too far, although I personally haven't fallen in love with him. There's no question. Again, the people that I have respect for that know a lot more than I do as far as scouting, they all love Clelin Ferrell, so as a group pick, I'm happy with it. Next up, with the 22nd pick in the 2018 NFL Draft, the Baltimore Ravens select Calvin Ridley, wide receiver out of Alabama. Ridley is another guy that you can't wrap your fingers around. Some people love him, some people hate him. Some people say he's the best wide receiver in this class, and in fact, I've noticed a lot of the big scout type guys, they really are sticking. So a lot of the guys that, Calvin Ridley was several months ago easily the best in the NFL. A lot of those guys are still saying Calvin Ridley's the best, whereas the draft community, right, the fans, the people in my group, the people that are watching these videos and stuff, they're much more volatile, and they've come around to quite a few people, and a lot of guys are saying Calvin Ridley is like a third-round guy. They just don't like him. Personally, I haven't fallen in love with him. A lot of these guys I'm trying to see what is it that makes them so great, and sometimes it's harder than others, and I think you need to really know what you're doing to see the nuance that makes them so good, and I have not been able to find that with Calvin Ridley, so I am excited to kind of move this to the next phase where I'm able to not just do mock drafts, but sit down with guys. There is a guy that I'm going to be working with that does a lot of coaching. His schedule has been pretty tied up, but I am excited to sit down with him and maybe find a few other people. If you are not just a fan, but I mean if you have genuine experience and can teach me some stuff as a coach or scout or whatever it might be, please feel free to reach out, because I need to sit down and find out the nuance, the little things that I'm missing as just sort of an observer and a diehard fan who watches this. There are some people that I just don't see it, and I need to be coached up on these things. And I think Calvin Ridley falls into that category. Same with Clelin and Ferrell. I can see a lot of what's great in him, but I'm not seeing why he's so elite, like early first. And Calvin Ridley, same situation. But as far as this pick is concerned, the Ravens are absolutely a team in need of a wide receiver. I think Calvin Ridley makes a lot of sense. And in terms of that's the other thing too. Anybody that some people think is a first-round talent, it's unlikely they're going to be a third-round pick because 32 teams out of 32 teams, somebody thinks he's a great wide receiver. He's going to be gone. In this case, he falls to the Ravens, who probably really like him. We'll leave it at that. With the 23rd pick in the 2018 NFL Draft, the Atlanta Falcons select Denzel Ward, cornerback out of Ohio State. Man, I'm not even. Usually I Google these just to make sure, and I'm just kind of winging it. I probably got like 3 or 4 of these wrong already. I'm just looking back thinking, man, I had to have gotten somebody wrong by now. I need to get back to Googling it just to make sure. But I'm sticking with Denzel Ward, cornerback out of Ohio State. That was another group pick. Falcons, man, a team that needs to reclaim their glory. I mean, there's nothing more painful than nearly reaching that pinnacle, that Super Bowl, and then failing to win it, and then seeing your team slowly descend, and that's sort of where the Falcons are headed. A lot of other teams, the Seahawks are kind of in that way. The 49ers completely fell off a cliff. It's a very painful thing to have to watch, even as somebody who's not a fan of that team. So you've got to find out what it's going to take to get you back to that pinnacle. And I'm not counting them out. The Falcons are still in the race. They're likely going to be in the playoffs, and they could win the Super Bowl this year. I'm not counting them out. I'm not trying to be that way. But there's no question they're not what they were last year when they were a nearly Super Bowl champion football team. So whatever it's going to take to get you over that hump, that's what you got to go for. Denzel Ward, in this case, I think the group tended to think that he was the best player available, and that's why they went with this. Again, no notes, so I'm kind of free winging it, whatever you want to call it. I'll stick with free winging it. I'll put that on a t-shirt too. I'm free winging it. It's a legitimate scouting term. Next up, with the 24th pick in the 2018 NFL Draft, the New Orleans Saints select Malik Jefferson, linebacker, Texas. So this GM was Ryan. Here are his notes. This has been a common player mock to the Saints. The Saints defense has trended upwards after adding a lockdown corner in Marshawn Lattimore. They now need a leader in the front seven, and Malik Jefferson can be that leader. As of right now, Monte Teo and A.J. Klein lead that linebacking core, but with Klein facing constant injuries and Teo being very inconsistent. Jefferson is incredibly large and athletic with the ability to read defenses. He would serve well as the new young leader of the Saints front seven, pairing well with the other young leaders on the defense. Leader on the defense, Lattimore. They must give Breeze the defense he always needed to possibly add another ring to his finger. No question about it. There are teams that are very talented offensively, but I don't think anyone can even challenge the notion that it's defenses that win championships. I mean, it's just, with very few exceptions, the offense just can't seem to get it done without a defense. Again, you know which team I root for. I don't need to explain to you where I'm coming from with that. If you have a great offense and not a very good defense, you're just never going to quite get there. They've done really good by Drew Brees. They've added some really great pieces, and they've done some great things on defense. I think you keep building on that. Again, not in any way counting them out. They could absolutely be Super Bowl champions by the end of this. But assuming you're not, and even if you are, if you're going to continue this road, and if you're not going to find a replacement for your quarterback, and why should you, right? If you're at the pinnacle and you can keep Drew Brees on your team, just keep building, because you guys are building something really awesome out there. Just keep it going. Next up, with the 25th pick in the 2018 NFL Draft, the Buffalo Bills select Christian Kirk, wide receiver, Texas A&M. So, I mean, this is kind of exciting because they're adding these really dynamic kind of, I mean, that's the kind of team this is going to be. Now, it's difficult because, remember, they got Lamar Jackson, now they have LaShawn McCoy. It's difficult to try to figure out ways to utilize all these really unique talents. But if you can find a way to do it, it's going to be nearly impossible to defend this kind of a team. To have a guy like Shady McCoy who can just,
the things he can do are incredible. There's very few running backs that are more fun to watch than him. Now you've got this incredibly dynamic quarterback who can, just absolutely destroy you with his legs. And then you add one of the more dynamic wide receivers, one of the more talented slot guys, as well as special teams talent, Christian Kirk. If you can get a coach that can figure out a way to utilize these guys and be extremely creative with an offense, this could be an extremely difficult team to defend. Next up, with the 26th pick in the 2018 NFL Draft, the Jacksonville Jaguars select Mark Andrews, tight end, Oklahoma. Now that one I'm nervous about, but I'm pretty sure that's also Oklahoma. That's 3 Oklahoma guys now, if I am correct about all 3 of them. The GM for that was Michael, and here are his notes. Mark Andrews reminds me of Greg Olsen in Carolina. If he's even 3/4 of the player Olsen is, he'll be a steal. I have him with a top 10 grade, but due to the devaluation of tight ends, he falls to me. I grade him higher than any of the ones chosen in the first round last year. He's a physical presence down the seam and blocks well, gives Blake Bortles a big target, and will almost certainly start immediately over Mercedes Lewis. I don't think there's anything you could possibly complain about. I think the defense is a strength of that team. I think their quarterback is probably a little underrated. This year he had a decent year, even though he gets trashed. Good enough that you can look away for a little bit if you don't have a good value quarterback. Tight end is a big need. It's a good value. It's a good fit. I mean, it's as best as I can tell, it's a perfect pick here at 26. So, great pick by Michael for the Jaguars. Next up, at 27, what am I doing here? That threw me all off. With the 27th pick in the 2018 NFL Draft, the LA Rams select Josh Jackson, cornerback, Iowa. The GM for that is Cody. And Cody's notes, Cody made the pick, but I got some notes from Ryan. Don't really know why. I'm assuming Cody didn't give me notes and Ryan just gave me his thoughts, so I appreciate that. Ryan, Josh Jackson may be the most talented cover corner in this draft, leading the NCAA this year in both interceptions and passes defended. That's a pretty awesome stat. He's gotten his hand on more passes than anyone else this year by far. Originally a receiver, could be part of it, then converted to a cornerback. Jackson may have the best ball skills in the entire draft out of any of the defensive backs. At 6'1", he's a tall, long corner who can be used much like Tremaine Johnson, who may leave the team after being franchise tagged twice. If so, Jackson will be thrust into the number 1 corner position on this stout defense. That was a fantastic note. Couldn't say it any better. Thank you, Ryan. With the 28th pick in the 2018 NFL Draft, the Carolina Panthers select James Washington, wide receiver, Oklahoma State. This one got a lot of hate, but it depends which board you're using. Draft Tech, I think, has him and has consistently had him as the second best wide receiver in the draft. Definitely a first-round talent. I guess it just depends what board you're using, or if you're scouting on your own, what your particular opinion is. But I don't think the hate for the pick was necessarily warranted. But let me get to the notes here. The GM was Arden. Again, don't know how to say his name, Errond. But here's what Arden had to say. James Washington is a great receiver. He's had 3 consecutive seasons of 1,000-plus yards, and in those seasons recorded 10 or more touchdowns. That's pretty awesome. And wouldn't you want a guy who has the ability to catch a ball only 6 times yet still rack up over 200 yards? Oh, so he's one of those guys. He'd be a great number 2 wide receiver put next to Devin Funchess, and because he's a field stretcher, he'd be able to help Cam when he wants to go deep. The only thing I'll say about this, I don't understand the notion that Devin Funchess is a good number 1 wide receiver. There has been hype about him since day one. I never liked him. I never thought he was any good. I don't think he's ever been very good. Maybe a solid number 2 if you still had Kelvin Benjamin on your team. But if you're drafting a number 2 with the assumption that Devin Funchess is a number 1, I'm sorry, I'm just not on board with that. Isn't he a converted tight end? I don't know. I don't see it. I don't hate the pick, James Washington. But again, I'm hoping that we're picking him because we believe he's a true number 1, so we can put Funchess back into the number 2 role, because I'm not buying Funchess as our star wide receiver, because we are putting ourselves way behind the 8 ball with that one. I wonder if I'm finally going to get hate mail from Panthers fans. That should be my goal. I need to get every team dislike me at some point. I know with Browns, Let's see, Giants. What did I say about the Giants? I should trash them next time. I don't know. But the Panthers, yeah, your Funchess is garbage. So I look forward to hearing from you in the comments section. I shouldn't say garbage. Garbage means your grade is below 50. I'm not talking about that. I'm just picking on you is all I'm doing. I don't particularly care for them though. Next up, with the 29th pick in the 2018 NFL Draft, the Pittsburgh Steelers select Marcus Allen, safety, Penn State. I definitely need to Google that. Give me a second here. Yup, nailed it. All right. The GM for that was Owen. And once again, Ryan comes through with the note. The Steelers could use a more do-it-all safety than Allen. I love Allen being a PSU fan, but he's more of a hard hitter, which is what the Steelers already have. Elliott is more of a sideline-to-sideline safety who can serve well in pass coverage, which could certainly benefit the Steelers' inconsistent secondary. So, not a very glowing endorsement there. That's why you need to give me your own comments. If you want something positive being said, you got to provide the positivity. Otherwise, somebody else comes along and the only note is negative. From my own perspective here, I'm looking at this. I don't really see a lot of real good safety talent on the team. I acknowledge that sometimes there are people that are injured, and I'm not looking at this rightly, but even people on the bench and people that are injured, I'm not seeing anybody at the safety position that would be even considered a good player. I don't see anybody. There's Mike Mitchell and Sean Davis are listed as the two active guys. Sean Davis being the strong safety. I have to assume there's somebody else that's playing safety. Maybe there's an injury somewhere, because Sean Davis is probably the worst safety on the entire team and one of the worst in the NFL based on this grade here. It's just absolutely pathetic. So maybe that's what this particular GM was looking at. Maybe they also have Pro Football Focus, saw that and said these people need a strong safety desperately and went out and got Marcus Allen. I'm not entirely sure. I'll leave that up to Steelers fans to come into the comments section and correct the record on that one, because I don't want to put my name on that as a matter of fact. I'm just telling you what I see and maybe what the GM saw there. Next up, with the 30th pick in the 2018 NFL Draft, the Seattle Seahawks select, and again, they got this because of the trade, where they picked up a couple extra options, Chukwuma Okorafor. Oh, I was looking forward to that one for a very long time. Offensive tackle, Western Michigan. So, Seattle Seahawks going offensive line. Obviously, I'm okay with that. Trevor made the pick. Here was his note, very simple. Dear Seahawks GM, Russell Wilson is a great guy. Please stop trying to kill him. Nuff said. So he wrote himself a little letter. I have a feeling that this is a similar letter to what the Seahawks staff has received several times. Probably not so polite and kind, but I have to imagine they've heard this several times. They do need offensive line help. Strangely, whenever I talk about a team that needs offensive line help, that's when I get trashed the most, right? You talk about the Vikings still not having a great offensive line. Oh, yes, they do. It's amazing. You talk about Lael Collins being garbage. He's the best ever. People love their offensive lines. I don't get it. So, Seahawks fans, if you love your offensive line, be sure to tell me how much you hate me in the comments section. I have not heard much from you guys. Best as I can tell, Seattle Seahawks offensive line is not good. It is, in fact, atrocious and needs to be upgraded. Whether Chukwuma Okorafor is the answer or not, I don't know, but that is the selection. Hopefully, for the sake of the Seattle Seahawks and their Super Bowl aspirations, they can really hit on one of these guys eventually. Probably need to look at guard and center and whatnot in the future as well. In the future, meaning throughout the draft. But why I keep wanting to say his name, I don't know. Chukwuma Okorafor to the Seahawks. Next up, with the 31st pick in the 2018 NFL Draft, the New England Patriots select Mason Rudolph, quarterback, Oklahoma State. Oh, Googled it, got it right. Yeah, I don't know. Let me just read the note here. Anthony is the GM. He said he is someone that can learn from both Brady and Hoyer, then maybe take over as starting quarterback one day. Obviously, it's pretty self-evident that that's the purpose of the pick, but that is the comment there from Anthony. Pretty straightforward why you would want to make the pick. It's just a matter of, do you like Mason Rudolph? I don't think it's very unlikely of a pick. I think it makes sense for the Patriots if they believe Mason. I'm just not a big Mason Rudolph fan. And I also don't like taking people in the first round that aren't going to be playing, especially someone that isn't going to be playing anytime soon. I mean, this guy, you look at Garoppolo, and it was like, oh, he's going to be the heir apparent. He's going to be the next one. He sat on the bench forever because Brady refuses to retire. He's going to be playing for 45 more years. So, you look at Mason Rudolph, and you think, is he even good enough to be a starter? I'm not sure. He's going to be sitting on the bench forever. I don't know. Plus, you have an early second-round pick as well. So depending on what other talent is available, if you want another quarterback with, again, Mason Rudolph, Luke Falk, and some of these guys available, if you're looking for one of these guys to be the next heir apparent, you could probably get him because you have like the third pick in the second round or something. I would just wait. But this is just a first round mock, so you can't really trash somebody for that. You're going to go and grab the best player you find available. So not a horrible pick. But finally, with the 32nd pick in the 2018 NFL Draft, we have another trade as Clelin, who was begging and pleading me throughout the entire process, please let me trade in. The guy loves it. Clelin is a lot of fun to have in the group, and he desperately wanted to make another pick, so he does trade up. He does get another pick. I don't know exactly what the trade value was. I apologize I didn't take that down, but this is the Oakland Raiders trading up with the Eagles into pick 32. And with the 32nd pick in the 2018 NFL Draft, the Oakland Raiders select Vita Vea, defensive tackle, Washington. I like Vita. I think he's a really talented football player. I think I actually had him mocked to the Raiders in a different mock draft earlier on. But anyways, here's what Clelin had to say, and then again we have some notes from Ryan. So Clelin says Vea is an athletic freak at the defensive tackle position, something I definitely agree with. He fits a big need, and we were able to give up the pick because we have the most in the NFL. Fair enough. If we draft Roquan and Vita Vea, it is likely that we will change to a 3-4 and have Vea as nose, Edwards and Autry at end, with Bowman and Roquan at inside linebacker, and with Mack and Irving at outside linebacker. I think that's fair. Here's what Ryan had to say about it. I like the idea. Definitely cool to think about different schemes the Raiders could do. Vea and Smith make the defense so incredibly fast and will make things interesting in the future. Vea is something to watch, absolute space eater, but when he beats his man, he has some ridiculous burst to the next level, almost of a linebacker. He'll be so fun to watch and could certainly open up some space for Mack. And I think the cool thing about Vita Vea is, if I may elaborate myself, he is a bigger guy, and you look at him at nose tackle, but if you're looking just in terms of function, typically why you don't want a 330, 340-pound guy at 4-3 defensive tackle position is because he just doesn't have the athleticism that you would want. But he is about as athletic. He's the size of a nose tackle, but as athletic as a typical, whatever it would be, 300-pound 4-3 defensive tackle, whatever. I don't know how big they are. And not to mention, you do have some teams that will utilize a nose tackle in their 4-3 scheme. With that being said, I guess I'm just trying to say it doesn't really necessarily have to dictate what kind of a defense you are. I believe the Raiders already are a 3-4 team, if I'm not mistaken. But regardless, the point is, I think Vita Vea is the kind of guy that you could put on a 4-3 defense. There are some that use a nose tackle in a 4-3. Either way, whether they're 3-4 or 4-3, pretty sure they're 3-4. Vita Vea does make a decent amount of sense. I think they already have a decent nose tackle in Justin Ellis. At least he's taken a step. So, trading up to get Vita Vea, defensive tackle is fine because I don't think Vanderdoes has done very much to this point. Autry isn't all that phenomenal either. But I don't know. I guess, again, you're trading up, you're giving away picks, and you're drafting a position that isn't necessarily a need. He might be an upgrade, but I don't know. It's okay. It's not a horrible pick, I guess. I like Vita Vea, so for that reason, I like the pick. But outside of that, I guess I'm just kind of questioning it a bit. But anyways, that is it. That is the last of the picks. We are not doing a second round for this particular mock. Once again, be sure to check the links in the description that you can contact me, you can support me, you can get involved. I will talk to you next week for the next mock. Take care.